Okay, everybody, we are back. Another session, speaking through the content. All right. Other concepts and ideas, thoughts. The story makes sense because you told it so often. It feels familiar. Random poetic thought as a response to a thought that I had. Who is up for guarding your mind and correcting self-deprecating thoughts, right? The ego is adaptive and ensures societal cohesion by being aware of how other people would perceive our actions. In fact, here, let's go into another piece of content about the formation of the egoic entity that I have been conducting. It's not that I've been writing here, and I am for the target audience, and I'm forgiving, and it's all good. Okay, so old projects, here we are. Are you actually seeing this? No, you're not. Okay, great. Well, all right, content. Here is where we are, and here is where the fun starts. Let's go. Other concepts and ideas. Okay, so here we are next to it. Content. My content. Okay, let's go. So the formation of the egoic entity. You know, when we grew up and we were still young and small and tiny, as I'm right now making videos about the actual content and the actual concepts that I am about to look at and that I'm about to talk about and to teach, that I'm about to convey to people, right? This is the way to convey that. All right, cool, great. All right then. Yaha, yahoo, yay, okay, so here we are. Teachings on the mind, the human condition, the ego, mental abstraction of who I am with qualities, etc. to find one's place in society, mental abstraction of how the future is going to be, or past re-experiencing in order to learn, interference for health and overall bonding of society. For example, not sleeping on the table while we eat together when the other person could get offended. It is used our mind capacity and ensures that living together is possible in a large society. It is the individual stepping back from their own needs in order to fit into society. The egoic impulse is a suggestion, as is the intuitive impulse. We as humans, we have the power of choice. The egoic identity is the bridge between the real and the unreal. It is real in the sense that it can have a life of itself. Instead of distinguishing between the real and the false ego, I distinguish between functional and dysfunctional ego. Mechanisms of the egoic entity. Seeking the absolute in an either-or fashion. Dividing, that's seeing an isolated cause and trying to get rid of that. Splitting apart, getting rid of, instead of integrating. Mechanisms of the egoic entity. When you see something in others that you don't like in yourself or repress in yourself, you get triggered and react emotionally strong. The reaction to somebody else's comment can be likened to our reaction to our thoughts stating a similar thing. The child almost always reacts to the wishes of the parents, you should be so and so, with the transformed wish of himself, I want to be so and so, in order to avoid the pain of not being himself. Animals also experience emotions as it is believed, as well as conflicting impulses between, for example, leaving the child to join with the tribe, so self-preservation, and staying with the child. Whatever we can identify, we are not identified with. Being identified means to believe that something is part of you. Identifying something means that you can witness it. All right, this is decent content. Let's go. Yes, transform within himself, want to be so and so. This is also great content. We're just marking everything. It's fine. We're marching and marking. Let's go. Yes, so I don't need to be perfect to start serving. My weaknesses and still active conditioning talked about in truth and honesty build relatability. The mind is overcome by faith, so is every paradox. Because the paradoxical opposition is only on the level of mental understanding, emotionally the paradox can be felt. Workings of the mind. Number 1, ability to mentally distinguish, delineate and separate. With that ability comes the ability to connect. With the ability to abstract comes the ability to connect. Without the mental separation on the level of objects, we would not be able to select certain separate objects and relate them to one another to form tools, etc. On the level of society, we need to mentally distinguish ourselves in terms of strength, contribution, capacities, etc. in order to relate and find our own unique place in society and harness our specific gifts so that the society as a whole can flourish. Secondly, ability to anticipate the future and draw learnings from the past. We not only, like animals, have an intuitive knowledge of the past that aids the present, but we can mentally replay the past or anticipate the future for the trade-off of the present moment. Third, keeping alive what we experience as us. The human system has a self-preservation mechanism, that is, that it wants to keep alive. That does also relate in the mind-made entity as long as we experience it as ourselves. To protect, nourish our mind-made entity is a function of our mind and shows in defense of ideas, etc. Fourth, interference mechanisms with a natural state or natural inclination. Mechanisms of internal attitudes towards what happens. Number one, pain, running away from, avoidance, pretending it to be a void, running towards something else, trying to do away with, trying to get rid of, focusing on the thing you want to get rid of, augmenting and changing what is there or lessening. Pleasure, running towards something, trying to bring something about. Augmenting and changing what is there, amplifying, trying to transmute, resist through giving it a new meaning, clinging on to what is there, wanting to prolong. Alright, so let's post a new video here as we have had done that already, the very last one for today, which is super fun and easy playlists. Alright, so yes, we can do that. No, it is not made for kids, and I'm just basically talking through my process here. Personal growth journey. Don't we have a title? Do we not have a title? Yes, we do have a title, of course. Alright, well, procreate for the kingdom. That it is, exactly. Procreate for the kingdom. Exactly. Procreate for the kingdom. For the kingdom come. Journey to Giving, day 295 of 5. Procreate for the kingdom come. Yeah, it's fine. Alright, we do that. It's easy. Cool, publish. Fine. And now, first article. Let's grab the description and then we go right back into sharing what we actually here are able to share and willing and have the capacity and the responsibility to share about all of that. And so with that, let us now go to LinkedIn and publish the video, Procreate for the Kingdom Come. Procreate for the Kingdom Come. Exactly. That's how we do that. The biggest lie on LinkedIn. Yes we can, yes we can, yes we can. Procreate for the kingdom. Do not we have here? Alright, so we grab that. Copy. Alright. Alright then, well, okay. That is done. Let your kingdom come. That's where we will go. That's where we will take all of this, right? Learning, practicing, speaking, learning my voice, learning to utilize my voice, practicing everything that we're doing here, everything that we're doing here. Procreate for the kingdom come. All right. All your sons and daughters will be rested by your throne. Oh, with lyrics as well. With the lyrics, we are going forward and creating, manifesting the life, the one life. Let your kingdom come. All right, here we go. Here we go, and all of a sudden, at day 290, it takes on a whole different vibe, all of it, all of that. All right, cool. All right, well, let's go back. Okay, pleasure. Okay, so we start out developing an egoic entity when growing up. And this is important for each human to take her or his place in society. Mostly then we forget that first of all we are part of nature and that our mental capacities is a special property of our evolved brains that come out of nature as well. There is a time in a child's development where the mental functions of anticipating the future and analyzing the past sets in. This is also a time where the previously unconditioned experienced love is experienced as conditional, meaning only certain behaviors are accepted by the parent. We reason that only when we are a certain way we are accepted, so only a certain part of us is acceptable. We do not have at this point the reasoning capacities to see that A, what parents permit and not is partly due to their internal markup, and B, we don't see the situational context of which our behavior is unacceptable. We reason that this behavior in general is unacceptable. So we reject that part of us as a trait, not only as situationally inappropriate. When those two overlap in the development, the egoic entity starts to build itself in the child's psyche. The entity is a mind-made entity comprised of mental reasoning with strong emotional connotations, meaning what is mentally reasoned is related to the access to parental affection, which is equal to the survival of the child. So to keep this mind-made entity alive, it is to ensure that the entire system stays alive. The egoic entity is complex and individual and in its manifestation, but has general working principles and archetypes. The child reasons, first, how I should be in order to increase the chance of parents showing affection. Second, how I must not be in order to decrease the chance of parents withdrawing affection. The first is going towards something that motivates us, like attention or money. The second is avoiding something that we fear, like offending somebody. So from these early childhood association patterns of what is desirable, increasing the chance of affection, and what needs to be avoided, decreasing the chances of withdrawal of affection, the psychological blueprint is formed that runs the adult. Even if we get aware of that, we still as adults follow that blueprint. Even if it doesn't run us unconsciously, we remain influenced by that. And as we progress on our life's path and accumulate life experiences, new association pathways are formed that expand the original blueprint into more complexity. So somebody might get upset in an argument with another person because she feels this conversation is such a waste of time, because she links avoidance of that interaction with free time, which in turn is linked to practicing her favorite instrument, which was linked to the past childhood experience as increasing the likelihood of praise and parental affection. This is one example of avoidance behavior due to mental association patterns based on the early child blueprint. So if the parents are seeking behaviors from the child to fill their own emotional void, the more they selectively love certain behaviors. They love the child conditionally, not unconditionally. This exclusivity for certain parts of the child encourages the formation of the egoic entity. If the parents are seeking from the child behaviors that they were seeking from their parents, they take the child's behavior personal. If the parents are seeking from the child behaviors that they were seeking from their parents, they take their child's behavior personal. So they in turn make the behavior personal to the child. The more the child feels personally wrong instead of situationally displayed behavior being wrong, the more the urge to being different is ingrained in the child's psyche. The more the urge to be different is ingrained in the psyche, the more the urge to make life circumstances different than they are emerges. Due to little or non-existent education on life and happiness, many people carry the notion that happiness comes from the things that happen, that I have or don't have, that others do or don't do to me. So most parents love the child conditionally, nurturing the child's anxiety to be different. This in turn breeds a psychic markup that resists alignment with life. Alignment with life means acknowledging that what is okay the way that it is. This means also to acknowledge that you are okay the way that you are. Those two go both ways. Aligning with life helps being okay the way you are, and vice versa. The deep-seated fear of not being okay the way you are breeds, number one, the need to add onto the egoic entity. Most people with a strong degree of an egoic entity experience, number one, a general underlying feeling of unease and stress and lack. So in the same way as the child tries to think of ways to please the parent to fill that void, the adult tries to think of ways to fill that void. This leads to fearful chasing of materials such as money, sexual partners, travel experiences, seminars, opportunities, etc. This leads to the mass consumerism and waste that we see in today's world. Second, resisting nature. Because you don't like your own nature, meaning the way that you are split off from your nature. You instead live in the mental realm of how things should be instead. How you relate to your internal is how you relate to the external. So in not being able and willing to feel your own nature within, we are unable to feel the nature that is on the outside. So in that way, we can consume meat without empathy or watch natural destruction without strong emotional reaction. When we are split off from our own internal nature and how we are, and instead chase the anticipation of ease in a job promotion, we also split off from nature and empathy with it, and instead building a power plant out of anticipation of the emotion of progress. So when we try to heal the current nature destruction catastrophes, wars and inequalities, this core wound in the individual needs to be addressed. The urge that things should be different the way that they are because I need them to be different in order to be different than I am. So out of these capacities for mental abstraction, the following archetypical behaviors emerge. Number one, wanting to sustain that which has run its natural course, like an emotion. Wanting to bring about something that is not. Wanting to do away with what is. That has the following implications. We are rarely present, meaning we are rarely at ease with the situation. We rarely experience life out of an unconditional state, but out of the viewpoint of our egoic entity, meaning to heal this egoic way of living, we need to understand that what we anticipate or fear is always an emotion. It is never the thing, person, etc. It is always the way that we anticipate to feel. Realizing that we are life and nature on a very physical level. When we grow up, we accumulate conditioning in order to fit into society. We develop an external reference of whether our behavior is acceptable in service to the survival of the entirety of society. Then after a time comes the shedding away conditioning in order to live in alignment with life. We have ingrained the external reference intuitively and integrate an internal reference. In that way, we make sure that we bridge our personal fulfillment with the survival of society. This deconditioning happens by itself as long as we don't interfere with it. Life hands us certain partners of the opposite sex that match us in the way to bring up a certain part of our conditioning. In knowing the value of that, we can let the healing process happen. In uneducated interferences with the gift of life, however, in uneducated interference with the gift of life, however, we are doomed to recreate those same experience and attract the same type of partner over and over again. Life hands us certain situations that confront us with our major life challenges. Life hands us daily triggers that will lead to the natural healing and resolution process as long as they are not interfered with. We start building our egoic entity or self-concept of what it is, what degree to which person is acceptable and unacceptable. So we look for ourselves, for a definition of ourselves in the other. As long as we have not found the internal reference of heart and intuition guiding us through life, we will look for ourselves in the other, so we feel our attention drawn in their direction, looking for confirmation and approval. Is this okay? Is this not okay? Etc. As long as we haven't built this internal reference of what's right and true for us, right? So animals experience themselves as separate, yet they remain individual in the sense that they know that they are undivided nature, that they are undivided nature beyond that. Identity means that which we feel identical with. Our unchanging identity is the nature that we are. A volatile identity can be cast away, is that from our egoic entity. When we feel identical with that, we identify, we create suffering. Human nature, faculties, conceptualization, memory prediction, ego versus false ego. The real self comes before the conditioning, choices and will. The included is not the inclusive. It does have the same parts and structures. The leaf is the tree, but it is consequent to what is referent. The leaf is the tree. Not to try to be the inclusive in the form as being all one, but being one in essence as the expression of the one. What is referent to both of them, what are both consequent to, is their relation. They depend on each other. That doesn't mean that one is inferior, as both are consequent to the relationship. The inner and the outer. Trying to affect life and impose ourselves on life, life is not going to suffer. But your life is going to suffer. Resistance does not affect the tree, but the leaf is affected if the leaf tries to wander by itself. People are created in God's image, but not to mix up the form with the essence and infer the totality and inclusivity in the included of the form. We are not here to save Mother Earth. She is fine, she will adapt. But she is here to teach us, to save us. The sunlight feeds the root. The internal process is fed by the fruit. Okay? Revealing new aspects of the self. The human condition. The gift of the humans, our challenges and opportunities, give rise to the human longing that leads us on the path, which is called our human journey. Relation, integration, a journey full circle. And so we are inferring from that our own condition, self-knowledge and your own journey. So what is the goal, what is the promise, and what is the way? The goal is to understand how life works. The promise is to make your life work with happiness, with ease, with aliveness. The way is to apply the science of how life works by exercising, following the heart. So how do we bridge our internal duality? How do we integrate into alignment with life? We realize that we are the body. And then later we realize that we are beyond the body, shifting our identity, realizing that we are nature. So we see conditioning only as conditioning, and we all are conditioned. This is not some personal fault, but a reaction, chain-like. Emotions are only a wave of energy, thoughts are only energy movement, making the experience that there is a space where these things arise. So what are the teachings of life that can be applied to the personal life? What are the new mindsets of life, etc.? Man, that was exceptional. Really good. Really good. Man, alright. This is really decent. This is really decent. This is really decent, man. Alright. Alright. Yeah, man, alright, let's go. This is like decent. Alright. Dang. Alright, 10 years, man. That's my manifesto. Alright then. Teachings on life. Impermanence. Life is change. The cycles of life consist of growth and expansion, reaching a tipping point and going the other way into decline. Like the assimilation and dissimilation of the plant. Structures are built up and broken down again. The lesson here is that change is inevitable. Only when we think that things won't change, we are mistaken. While in relationships, jobs, etc., change comes. So instead of being surprised and coping with the change we may anticipate, is because this is a law of life. Life is cyclical, life is movement, life is flow. The universe expands and contracts like waves in the ocean. For no reason, it is only a play of energy. Also, life has certain seasons. It makes sense to ride the waves so that it can carry us. In the same way as we might focus on ourselves first when we are young and single, to understand life and focus in the bigger proportions about receiving so that we can go with the cycle of giving once we have children. The forms of this world arise out of nothingness. It is one of life's great paradoxes. Existence comes out of non-existence. Fullness comes out of emptiness. So the non-successful approach is to fill ourselves out of this perceived emptiness. The successful approach would be to feel the emptiness and see the fulfillment that is coming out of it from emptying yourself out. Here are the major lessons in life to learn. Non-resistance versus resistance. Initiation without force. We don't force results. Results are let go of. Actions are invited. Balance versus imbalance. Faith versus seeking validation. Opening and letting go of contraction. Surrender instead of making happen. Offering and receiving. Number 1. Make the study of life and of your conditioning a learning priority. The gift of our society is that we get triggered a lot, a great opportunity to unveil our triggers. Second, it's all the emotions we seek. Identify what is missing right now, what would be needed for the life of your dreams, and then to discover the emotions behind that. Third, life goes by itself. There are two polar opposite modes of living life, from the head and from the heart. That which comes naturally and spontaneously out of you, and that which you make happen against your natural tendency. When we feel closer to the beating of our heart than to the thoughts in our head, we are on the right track. By following the path of the heart, we end up with the life of our dreams. Maybe not exactly in the form, but in the essence. Maybe not in the form that we dream of, but in the feelings that we associate to it. Following the way of the heart will make the longing cease and lead us to where we feel everything is okay the way that it is. It takes different amounts of time for different people. The experiences that one can make on this path are the following. I have made important life decisions to get out of life circumstances that are detrimental to me, and decisions to affirm life circumstances that serve me. I have realized that thinking about myself and others go hand in hand. Part of the work I am doing is geared towards serving others. I have realized that there is a different flavor of enjoyment and fulfillment that comes from serving others. Through having weeded out life circumstances that don't serve me and create life circumstances that do serve me and others, I have created an environment to realize that I am totally okay the way that I am. In feeling that, I also feel that everything that arises in the external and internal world is totally okay the way that it is. That does not mean that I approve of it or that I must not or cannot act upon it. But things that are presented are accepted. Further on my path, I have made the experience that there is a difference in acceptance. Whereas I before accepted things after initial resistance, now I accept things without realizing and reflecting upon this acceptance. And it is not to become totally like nature again, but to act a little more in alignment. As an example of reference of the opposite polarity. We as humans, we have the choice, nature has not. So it is to be checked with the intuition where on the polarity we need to respond from to the moment that arises. To act out of a place of ego, we adapt to society. Acting from a place of nature, we adapt to life. To act out of a place of ego, we adapt to society. Acting from a place of nature, we adapt to life. To take nature as the first reference, shifting the emphasis of focus. So in the same way as the ego arises out of nature and is consequent to nature, the interference of nature, our first reference is how nature would act and respond. So let's take a tree, for example, and how to live our lives with ourselves when we are by ourselves going through life. Like the tree, there are two worlds, the inner and the outer. Both depend upon each other and need each other to expand. So it's internal work and life practice. Internally, it's about seeing what you don't see, and outside serving and giving more space to more of life by expanding your branches. Life teaches us from the outside in. We observe a certain relation with life. We make personal realization based on reference to some general archetypical teaching, but need to affirm this realization by entering a new relationship with life based on this realization. Learning works that we reference something to something known, that we reference something to something that's already known. It is entirely unrelatable to something known. We are either indifferent or confused. So the first learning happens in reference to the absolute, which is intuitively known and experientially known. The included doesn't interfere with the process that is suggested by the inclusive. In that way, the included doesn't suffer the consequences of separation. It adjusts so that the changes in the process can still flow through it, but doesn't try to alternate the process. Adapting instead of alternating is the teaching. They are different processes in our own lives, of high and low energy. What applies to the whole also applies to the parts. So in observing the workings of the totality of life, we can learn how to live our own life. Life also teaches us the way it works to align us with the way that it works, so that we work the way that it works. Life aims at restoring balance. What seems like an imbalance on one level integrates into homeostasis on a higher level. They are dying cells and healthy cells, but the organ on the higher level is in balance. Sometimes some organs work overtime while others rest, but the entire system is in balance. There are stars dying and being born, but the universe in its entirety is in balance. Physics teaches us that all is energy. Energy itself is neutral. It is charged positively or negatively, but it is neither good or evil. Good or evil are evaluations from a mental point of view based on our small frame perspective rather than the big picture perspective. Seeing everything that happens as neutral means unconditional acceptance. This is viewing life from life's big picture point of view. Seeing everything that happens through the filter of our mentality in terms of what we want or need or don't need means conditional acceptance. Life's mysterious process leads us to facing situations of experiences that we want to avoid and losing what we chase in order to break the attachment and integrate the former avoided or sought object into a neutral attitude or indifference. Wanting something and fearing to lose the same thing go hand in hand. Like a magnet, we cannot get rid of one side of the polarity. Healing is inevitable and it goes by itself. Life is a process, it goes by itself. We don't need to do something to start or keep the process. We need to stop interfering with the natural process. Awareness heals. Life circumstances can change for the better. Life circumstances change when our internal relation changes. It is possible to find happiness. Happiness is found to be there, not created anew. It is possible to find happiness. Happiness is found to be there, Happiness is found to be there, not created anew. Life strives towards balance. Everything that happens to us can be perceived as a teaching towards the restoration of balance, as a movement of energy exchange between opposite polarities like plus and minus in order to balance out to neutral. Success is attracted rather than pursued. What we resist persists. Resistance means interference with a natural process. Resistance interferes with feelings or thoughts running the natural cycle. That means that those feelings or thoughts remain in the system and persist in calling for attention. When the natural process is interfered with, the forces that changes the direction of the natural process builds up until interference is overcome and the natural process can flow. Like the blockage of a water streak, when the flow is blocked and the pressure builds up until the blockage dissolves and the natural process can flow again. Whatever we seek or want, it is never the thing, but the emotion we anticipate from getting it. We are never chasing things, but the emotions we associate with it. We don't chase to have something, but the way it makes us feel. The internal match the external. To improve aliveness, internal work is needed. How we relate to the external is a mirror of how we relate to the internal. So when we understand that happiness is the default state, only overshadowed by conditioning, external triggers can be seen as the pointers towards the internal conditioning that, if I let go of that, unearthed happiness. Unearthed happiness. The degree and amount of feeling resistance to external situations, like rejecting, not wanting, being pissed off by something happening, matches the degree of amount of feeling of resistance towards parts of ourselves. When we experience life as dull, unalive, or just one mesh, we experience us internally as dull, lacking in variety and depth, and one mesh without distinctiveness. An emotionally rich life can only be experienced by an emotionally rich person. The human condition requires us to bridge duality and oneness, to bridge the mental and the emotional, the real and the imagined, the conditioned and the unconditioned. Events in life happen when the time is right. This can only be felt in the moment. Life does not act according to plans and shoulds. Life acts from the present, not from the past. Just because the first flowers blossomed last year in mid-February, it doesn't mean that it needs to be that way this year too. It happens when the circumstances are right. Life feels when the present moment is right, not when things should happen according to past memory. Life has past-time memory, but it uses it in an intuitive sense, not in a determining sense. The past is servant to the present, not the present servant to the past. Anticipation of the future is also servant to the present. Life is polar in infinitely many dimensions. Every individual needs to find their own place on those dimensions. The way we find our place in life is to tune in with our intuition. Oftentimes, we are head-drivenly moving towards each one of those polar opposites in order to naturally gravitate towards our optimum. There is a trade-off between mental functioning and the present moment. Both cannot exist at the same time. It is either one or the other. We need to find the balance between those two. In the present, contentment is found. Past and future are natural for our survival. The intuition needs to guide us through this polarity. Life goes from simplicity through complexity, integrating back into coherent simplicity, but with the intuitive knowledge and experience of complexity. The human journey goes through being lost in complexity to arrive at wisdom. Like a plant growing from soil through complexity and blossom and reintegrating back to the earth, but with the experiential knowledge of complexity and life. In a similar way, we come out of life, gather life experiences, get lost in complexity and integrate back into life. So this is a general archetype of life, also for your understanding. We know little, accumulate knowledge, get lost in it and arrive back at simplicity, but with the intuitive knowing of complexity. That's why you can explain a complex topic to a child if you really explain it, but you cannot make the child explain it back to you because it lacks the experience and the intuitive knowledge of the complexity that gives context to the simplicity. The formula reads, you start from simplicity, you go out the motivation of seeking, go through the confusion of complexity and arrive back where you started, but experience the situation from a different place. So the adult journey goes from the polarity of childlike experience of the world, not knowing the opposite, through adult experience of the world, not remembering the opposite, back towards mature experience of the world, childlike, but with depth of experience of the opposite polarity. Another aspect of the human journey is you starting out being yourself. You forget what you are, seek remembrance in one of the several ways that are offered, remember, and then be yourself again, but with the depth of experience of having lost yourself. Like in the story and the parable of the lost son. We are separate in form, but we are one in essence. Connection means separation in relation. Alienation means separation without any relation. Oneness underlies separation, connection, and alienation. We can liken life to a tree and our own lives to different buds on the tree. It is easier to see that the tree is also the bud. From the perspective of the bud, it is not so easy to see that the bud is the tree. Not in its entirety, of course, but the bud is part of the tree but it is still the tree. We all from one source, as separate leaves come out of the same tree. We have come out of the same earth. We are all made up of the same elements. The iron of our blood was originally in the ancient oceans. And even before that, the asteroids that impacted the Earth, when it was 700 million years old. The oxygen that feeds our cells is a waste product of bacteria that worked for billions of years in order to enrich our atmosphere. The heart is beating by the same mysterious, automatic and non-controllable force that makes the wind blow and that makes the earth turn. Life works through us. We are life. Number 1, teachings of life by observing nature. Second, healthy attitudes towards life. Building a new relation to what happens. We want to bridge oneness and relation. We can make the experience of being one with life, and at the same time we need to relate to life. We find ways to interpret what happens to us, to our values, plans, etc. Relation to life means relation to our inner and the outer world. Third, how do I make my life work? Practical life advice like on rest, work and play, energy management, time management, prioritizing life aspects. What is the art of living? Applying the science of the workings of life. The art of living is the art of using the heart to apply science. Integrating polarities, our mental world, our egoic entity and life in us. How life works and how our mind works. Teachings on the mind, healing, work and psychotherapy in the section on teachings on the mind. Everything that happens can be used to get back into alignment. Life does the deconditioning work for us. We just need it to allow. Man, that's decent. Let's go.